Dhammo Yonde Dejen Shibo Rajambo Yandobo Zubila Ribo Don Yaso Dembo Dewa Shibo Juden Jum Jubo Devye Kalo Jiwa Laname Ladame Danje Dembo Sanje Jonde Pejawa Jaja Dobo La Jansen Chodo Jaso Che Wo Gongzi Gongni Zu Wo Che Dongzi Sa Chen De Na Gong Ba De Bo Ma Nian Je Den De Na Zhu Che Song De Cui Ke Bo Che La Jiang Zi Na Da Gong An Chu Do Zu Sang Wo Yi Xie Jiang Zu Si Je Ren Bo Zha Ba Je Den So Na Lang Ye Wo Gong Bo Chu Nian Che La Jiang Zi 千九电波正面大月交，三多照我就那样子。对着见着随波送我见，两面绝见就那样子。广播突厥接电波，当街见边电波。三那有电叫做些，地线写了样子。大边的桥着我就给也我送列住，几多的当就就我先就那相子，这年这月那样的老婆到老肉的，先给当把一点点给的那样相子，六把这样我们家先给我别送走我。 让给三年用手的年年上街的吧，干嘛着的嘛没当就嘛随我就我，没了路到这道不都是就能得到，是能的也堂前是包也，国防都能解决着的。 嘎当那当七月老主，随便做来着我哟。
Thus I have heard. At one time, the Blessed One was dwelling in the royal domain of Altered Peak Mountain with a great gathering of monks and a great assembly of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the samadhi of the many aspects of phenomena called profound appearance. At the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom, saw the five skandhas in their natural emptiness. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, "How should a son of the lineage train who wishes to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom?" Thus he spoke, and the noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva answered the Venerable Shariputra with these words. Shariputra, those men and women of the lineage who wish to follow the practice of the profound perfection of wisdom should look at it like this. The five skandhas should be seen purely in their natural emptiness. Form is empty, emptiness is form. Emptiness is not other than form. Form also is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, recognition, compositional factors, and consciousness are empty. Shariputra, like this, all phenomena are emptiness, and having no characteristics, they are unborn and unceasing. They are not impure or pure, they neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there is no form, no feeling, no recognition, no compositional factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no phenomena. There is no quality of sight and so on until no quality of mind and no quality of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance and no exhaustion of ignorance and so on up to no old age and death and no exhaustion of old age and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, no origin, no ending, and no path. No wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since there is no attainment, bodhisattvas rely on and abide by means of the profound perfection of wisdom. And since their minds have no obscurations, they have no fear. Transcending falsity, they attain nirvana. All the Buddhas who dwell in the three times have relied upon the perfection of wisdom and have become true and complete Buddhas of unsurpassable, perfect, and complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of the profound perfection of wisdom, the mantra of insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra. The mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for it is not deceptive. The mantra of the perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Teata om gate gate paragate parasamgate bodhi soha. Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva should train in the profound perfection of wisdom. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and said to the Bodhisattva Mahasattva noble Avalokiteshvara that he had spoken well. Well done, O son of the lineage, it is so. O son of the lineage, since it is just so, the profound perfection of wisdom should be practiced just as you have taught, and the Tathagatas will also rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, the Venerable Sharadvatiputra and noble Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva Mahasattva, and the entire gathering, as well as worldly beings, gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One.
Dozo gyana buje daze yana chuje yade son. Doda jero nye mo nye no leje jadu chuze jin. Mare me se donge nyugu chenye chuze jeju. Dene daje saje daze yude lizo jase doye go. Jara juda junye de dole me se jan yang la de ara bazana ara bazana ara bazana de zeden juje chero ze Dali demo me ba ra se ne ka da de je jong lo do ba ye lo do ba be no le do zo lo do ba be no le do ya lo ya lo 小姐做我的那所我的，多劫见我的些多劫成，就是的罗波当那罗波，别就中别波当阿的想，娘的心罗吉拉所我的，上波同面一年当着的，求的对月的当着别别。谁造过错多年所念梦，了解识别解了所望的，遥远月面兄弟路中道，大王照我识别不久前，常见各种婆婆有些所，上摩大别解了所望的，西主大别穷阿的上。高当定别面部中的节，念就那些过去所了所，高当那么那了所我，刚接心的自己中啊，我到这边我修节操节，当我定别到不给着节，要是就不接那所我的。教诵各地老母都结成，刚老各地新年最壮的，确当推广我主自在美，专心老母能老所望的，让教诵着跟老大爷们，给上淘宝这边叫我叫。这月这边头看这包夜，说在今年能老说我，见我更多养到那么多，这边去这边老东西的，少到人家有点老多呢，多久强给过。要到一处三界就当作，就当那想就不多到那就做的，大约去去就别说那的，到了平息三界如果修三界，就当作的就当那想就不多到那就做。大概就别说那的，到了平息三界如果修三界，就当作的就当那想就不多到那就做。大概就别说那的，到了平息三界如果修。哎呀，我错。그래서 저희 주로 세상에 대질러데 담아서 샤이라 나리 좀 전에 집에 걸어 내가 내가 봐도 저희 주로送的 뒤서 라사 제봉라 게 나리 비게 주다게 뒤서 나리 좀 전에 집도 되게 게 나리 버기 샤제 세나리 달라마 고마 샤메 샤게 지마지 예집이 단도 뒤서야 나 가서 샤 저희 주로 내가 봐도 당위에서도 저제 지대 시간 하고 보고도
So it is a custom when giving teachings on Lam Rim Chenmo, the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, is given on the basis of prior to the teachings, reciting 6 preparatory, the rituals of the Joy Chuduk. So this should be recited. It is a custom, and but here it is due to the limit of time, we're unable to complete the entire 6 preparatory rites. But this is how it should be done in, according to traditionally. But now I've heard that some of the followers of the great master King Lam Rim. So his followers are actually giving these teachings on the great deities and the stages of the path to enlightenment. So when they are giving these teachings, they follow the tradition of reciting the 6 preparatory rites prior to giving the actual teachings of the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, something that I think is very important.
아니 다 가족이 뒤에 제일 아니네 가족이 저 싫어기 아니 잠배야 걸로만 진데 알아봐서 뒤에 제일 아니 매제대 피 손대 매제 뒤에 제일 나래 나머지비 아니 다 손대 대체네 뒤에 지체셔로 돼야 비타고 쉬지 세그라다 돈대 버리지 참조 참되게지.
So although we are unable to recite the entire 6 preparatory rites, but I just follow what His Holiness is actually, recites prior to the teachings, which is, begins from praise to Buddha Shakyamuni. And I'm not sure this tradition is existed in Tibet when they're giving the Lam Rim Chenmo, but one thing that I'm very sure is when we came to India, and His Holiness always, distinguishes paying homage and reverence towards Buddha Shakyamuni rather than any other, deities and so forth. So therefore, we are reciting this praise to Buddha Shakyamuni and the praise to Manjushri as the deity of wisdom. Then this will then be followed by the mandala offerings. And then we do recite the supplication verse to the lineage gurus of the great deities on the stages of the path to enlightenment, which actually encapsulates, abbreviate practice of the 6 preparatory rites.
아니 대제네 배우나 조이치로 떠나야 나래 소이게 된지 소도 좀 투표 안 보러 와. 근데 라마 집이 소이게 된지 라마로서 통화도 이제 자러 와. 얘나 그 질리 체쳐스게야만. 또 라마 소소 사게 되지만.
So when His Holiness gave the teachings, he gave the teachings prior to these teachings, reciting the long version of the supplication verse to the lineage gurus of the great deities in the stage of the path to enlightenment. However, we are reciting the abbreviate part of the verses, supplication verse to lineage gurus of Lam Rim Chenmo. And so here now, So here, when speaking about the principal deities of the merit fields are concerned, difference between the principal deities of the merit fields of Lam Rim Chenmo or Chorichuru or the 6 preparatory rites and the Lama Choba or the Guru Puja. So where in the Guru Puja we have the Lama, Tsongkhapa, at his heart is then Tuong, which is Buddha Shakyamuni, and Vajradhara. So this is the main principles of the merit fields of Lama Zopa, whereas in the merit fields, the principal deities, the merit fields of the Joyosuru, as the Buddha Shakyamuni alone. The Buddha Shakyamuni will be the main figure of the merit field.
영화 트레이닝 지라션들 대 정원의 나리 소전의 거라 나리 소대게 따대다 나리 반항이 따대 다부 자성이 통한 많이 들었잖아. 언제 돼야 다부 자성이 좋아 얘기지. 이거 뭐뭐 자성 언제 됐을 체대니네. 언제 제지네. 손들 나오도.
So the way of chanting this supplication verse to the lineage gurus of the great deities on the stage of the path of enlightenment, and His Holiness always requires this chanting must be done on the basis of the tradition of Dabuddhism, where there's a really soothing melody is involved in reciting those verses. So therefore, whenever His Holiness gives the teachings, and he always requests the chant master from Dabuddhism or the Gomong monastery, the chanting master of Gomong monastery, where they follow the tradition of the Dabuddhism, Dabu monastery, sorry.
그 저번 자서대 라레라 미세기 쉬위디 좀 많이 배지어서라다 먼저 다본 자면은 주세요. 다다 남아도 여만이 쉬는 게 뒤에 그 코멘트 다본 자면은 주세요. 저기 포만 거기 라레 라마做的래도 라레 좀 많이 배지어서라.
So Dabu monastery has a very, follows the very strong practice of the great deities on the stage of the path to enlightenment. So therefore, Dabu, great master of the Dabu monastery by the name of Jambal Hundup, is the main Lam Rim teacher of His Eminence, the Kebje Abong Rinpoche.
다들 되지. 당가도 되지. 당가 저기 되지. 다 경로주 카동에 자네. 딱시에 먹는다는. 지금은 먼저 얘기가 발라. 그러면 그러면 랑게 되지 나가라. 그러면 투명 뭐냐. 나래 집에 남아서 거는 지메 받지. 아니 대라 아니 당 지르대 차서 세나리는 나대셔서 되지. 돼야지. 맞아요. 야매제는 코로지 단다 그런 로마트네 자자 손지 많이 받지. 뭐서 지 당서 요제랑 진입 가실라. 투자와 준비. So
now here, without spending much time on the general introductions, let's stick to the actual teachings. For that, let's begin to visualize in order to cultivate appropriate motivations. Let's begin to meditate or to visualize Buddha Shakyamuni surrounded by all those great lineage gurus of the Lam Rim Chenmo. And so when we are visualizing Buddha Shakyamuni, one should not visualize Buddha as something that is depicted on the wall or some kind of picture or some kind of image, but rather one should visualize Buddha Shakyamuni in the nature of light and being a real person surrounded by all other lineage gurus of the Lam Rim Chenmo.
소수 직원들 얘기 전화면 되었지. 맞아 년도 여바데 된지 년도 여바데 리피부터 올라이바. 맞아 미치바인데 쇼게야 너무도 강가 칼라기 된다를 소자 무슨 천절라 사이트만 된다를 러시아고. 그 대나 얘기잖아. 맞아 대화 때도 대의 된다를 강가기 나 다가라기 소수 대화 되고 이거도 강가 수주 대화 있잖아. 대화 제서 질러 대화 있잖아. 니 선제 강가 아니 때도 대화 줘야지. 년도 여상을 민가지. 근데 다 얘기 소소한 게 크다네. 커서는 나랑 여러 거잖아. 근데 저 있어서들 저야 시의 인연상이지. 소아슈 저거 지내도나 지 나셔도 된 거지. 받는 데마다 이제 차우라.
So then here, being oneself in their presence, and one is then surrounded by all other sentient beings, and just as right from the morning, as soon as we get up from our bed and we think of, getting some breakfast and so forth, not only human beings, including other sentient beings, all the way even down to the, insects, when they wake up and they look for something that's something that's that is needed for them, and so looking for something that is needed, everyone, not only human beings, but in entire sentient beings. Similarly, all other sentient beings, just as we ourselves, long to achieve happiness and overcome sufferings. So all other sentient beings have a similar wish to achieve happiness and overcome sufferings. So with this in mind, and think about that, I will take all those tasks upon myself to, provide the happiness for all other sentient beings, and I will diligently work for the welfare of other sentient beings, happiness of all other sentient beings. And with this, then one take refuge in the refuge field that one has already visualized, and then try to have a very strong feelings within oneself. So in order to cultivate such motivations, let's take 2 minutes to meditate. So now let's begin with identifying the 4 main outlines of the Lam Rim Chenmo, which begins from the greatness of the authors given in order to show the teachings as a noble source. For that, one should understand the actual backgrounds and then activities of all those great beings, beginning from Buddha all the way to one's root guru. So the next outlines is showing the greatness of the teachings in order to engender respect for the teachings. For that, think about such teachings actually teaches how to achieve happiness of oneself and that of all other sentient beings. And such teaching is given by those great masters by means of their great compassion. So then the third outlines is how to listen to the teachings, in which both the teachings and the authors are great. It's and then the teacher who is actually giving the teachings and disciples, the followers who are receiving the teachings, must have a motivations. Motivation is motivated by bodhicitta.
That's why such a sheba. Any chow carsa, chowing the children. Dambang Jalama Chita Rembalani. The largest of Shania Timbi sit down, 10 Lochitaja Unipani. So I Talam 10.
This is then be followed by the sequence in which the disciples are to be taught actual instructions, which then be followed by the two subdivisions, how to rely on the spiritual teacher, which is the root of one's spiritual path, and how to students train their mind after having relied on the teachings or the teacher. Sorry.
다 되네로 제다 제인 발라니 디데가 님보는 비시 그와다 님보 제다는 비치니 다 동문들 다 님보 제다는 비치들니 아지 나자라 님보 제다 님보는 증거지 다 동문들 다 님보는 증거로 송 주부 충분한 통원의 나제를 만나서는 주부 제다 통원의 나제를 만나서는 주부 챔피언 나제를 만나서는 제제 다 동문들자 다 주부 챔피언 나제를 만나서는 제라 송 대전은 주변고 생제 코나된바 생제 주다 지비수 생제는 쇼발로 주예제 다 동문인지자 다 생제는 쇼발로 질라 송 생제는 로발로 로비 전생 로발에 레와로 로비 상제면 주바 로발로 로비는 바니시바지 다 동문인지자 다 로발로 로비는 바니시바들라니 대바침 버절라로 제도 치바도 도제 대발로 주예제 다 동보로 송 상생제 로발로 한대장 장내 제세제 담바송 존에 제단이 주예제 다 동문인지자 다 존에 제단이 비치들라니 말에 송 강화로 비제 델라바는 비제 델라로 비바지 다 동문인지자 다 델라로 비바달라니 니 쇼바절라로 제단 치바도 파샤 타마니나 주예제 다 동보로 니 랑게 산제 주민 바지마 파르치마 로제다 제지 주민 바지마 리유 모바잖아 로제지 다 동벌로 주 신바 로제 추전 로제 저바 로제 전주 로제 산데 로제 샤라 로제 대연하게네 제세제 담바 존에 네 샹추선 비시오바 예동하라 로제 네 파르치마 주예변하게네 맞추시바 전주지 파르치마 대는 배치 타마티서 전주 바자로 대리 차도
So we are on the particular chapters of the Bodhisattva's practice, the fourth Bodhisattva practice of the perfection of joyous perseverance. And this, I think this will be the last day of teachings on the perfection of joyous perseverance.
되지. 다 선대지 파르 바카사 전주지 파신라 로치텔라 아니 가고에 예바텔레 레로스 넘버송 아니 두고에 tel라 아니 진짜 초기 본된바세네 니데네 제서 샤와라 이존노라 미세요아 인자나 디우고네 제바송고 예소소 안카세 저런거지.
So here now, one thing that we need to remember in this particular teachings is how to develop the practice of the perfection of joyous perseverance. In order to develop this, and there is a specific explanations of employing the methods of eliminate the incomparable factors, or the three incomparable factors, and then gathering the forces of favorable conditions, which has four parts, and those need to be remembered because Lama Tsongkhapa stated that this explanation is given in accordance with the Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's way of life, because it's a more comprehensive and elaborated explanations.
안되지. 다 가실 때는 전주 장비 편야선의 디카투데 거버드는 소소아. 내가 전주 맞잖아 가려야래서라서나 뒤통만에 받는 다다벌 전주 맞잖아 하대에 단단하게 카트 된다는 지대는 다 친칠에 메제데 나이 용어든 러시아나 야 도르마도 야래가 인산에 근데 다 진짜 깨지잖아 뒤서 쳐라만 도와데 전주를 장고도 소야지. So
here now we are particularly talking about the benefits of the perfection, practicing the perfection of joyous perseverance. So here, what it says is now, how about if you do not develop the practice, if you do not engage in practice of joyous perseverance, is because, right from the beginning list time up to now, we are wandering this cyclic existence is because of the lack of practice of the joyous perseverance. So therefore, I must, by understanding that, I must henceforth engage in uh, the perfection of joyous perseverance, continuously. So therefore, one's practice of joyous perseverance must be in a very steady manner, not something that you just you do it right now and then stop for a while and then again try to pick up, but rather one should do so in a very consistent manner. For instance, if someone, just you think about it, if suddenly if the snake appears in front of you, and you will try your best to get away from that side, the side of the snake, right? So that's in the same way. Think about what about if we really do not practice the perfection of joyous person, what will happen to us? So try to be oneself from keep a distance from not practicing the perfection of joyous perseverance, but rather engage in practice of joyous perseverance. So therefore, we find in the verse written by the second Dalai Lama, the Kyawa Gendendu, by saying that one should always rely on the perseverance, running, stream like perseverance, so that not only that you have perseverance, but one's perseverance is not for the welfare of one's own self, but solely for the welfare of other sentient beings.
Niga Pemba Tango de Echi, Nipa Juma Reze Jen, Dala Mena, Jine Jang, Dala Shin de Minjua, Teta Shashi Yuri Sang Shi Soji.
So let's continue from our the teachings on which is on 205, the page 205, and the first verse of the engaging in the Bodhisattva, engaging in the Bodhisattva deeds, where it says, "Whatever the false occurs, I shall reapproach myself, long ponder, by all means. I will do whatever it takes so that this shall never happen again." So here now, this talks about two things, the having a regrets of not being able to engage in practice of perseverance in the past, and committing yourself henceforth engaging in the practice of the perfection of joyous perseverance. So then it says, strives at any deep causes that give rise to the continuous powerful mindfulness that is the root of this practice. Rely on such activities, keeping the company of excellent teacher, excellent companions, and broad learnings, which are the cause of the powerful mindfulness.
당이 말로긴다 동보. 제샤대지. 담비시다 담비 조다 조바 당지. 대유 주만도 토바 소지. 레라 템바 샤오 대다양 소.
So there here, with read once again, rely on such activities as keeping the company of excellent teacher and excellent companions and broad learning, which are the cause of this powerful mindfulness.
되지. 다 맞아 소소도 지데 다 소소세가 다 간제 소소 랑수 때버 진용발라 라 타하스 모데 지고 이랑수 때버 용화 자지 팽거 말이에요. 사지 개개 타고 말어. 나제 개개 매와이나 레 개개요 말어. 그 랑수 때버 대발레 대리 말어. 개개요 말어.
So here now, how one can, confidently engage in the practice. One cannot confidently engage in the practice just mere having a blind faith. The blind faith will not lead to a confident practices. So therefore, one's practice must be done on the basis of devoid of blind faith.
안티지. 든트기 지 신체 도드메 얘기 쳔바다된 세나레 니 jettabden senare debatden senare 간제 든트기 되니 따다데바지 용발라 가루 거르사나 아니 조 가서 게이 조 세나레 아니 게이 셴에 더 체버레스 게이 셴에 체바상지 폐고 말이 제천나 덴비 투바메아이나 네 이를 제바 가능성 말와.
So then here, this must be done on the basis of encountering or the relying upon qualified spiritual teacher. And not only just you are relying on qualified teacher, but one must receive the teachings, the vast teachings from the qualified teachers, which will then become a confident of oneself of engaging in such practice.
되게 내 노래에 되게라고요. 저렇게 손좀 손용 비거라. 지 가사 코너라 야 차진정이 쫀쫀 손용 거마도 대바지고 사실 진은 손만에 손면도 와대. 러자 간데 지져이.
그렇게 engagement 강에 대하고
저렇게 손좀 손어디 나를 대바지는 리그레스는 진이 작고 말에 소소 내가 진 나용 거 같이나. 제바 제쇼 손야지.
So if you look at the teachings of the Lama Tsongkhapa, he would never say that what I'm saying you must believe and you must accept it out of faith. He never says that. He would always say, I'm teaching you, I'm giving you such teachings and explaining, but it's up to you whether you come to conclusion of how do you actually come to conclusions whether the teachings that I've given is true or not. It is entirely up to you, which means he's leaving open space for analysis.
맞죠. 세대에 또그 당송이나 다리 이제는 저저 때거나 랑수 마토이나 제사스 게면도 랑수 통해지 소소 랑완다 룰레전에 제초겐지도.
It's just like our mundane life. If one has to rely on someone for one's own day-to-day life livelihoods, then one is not confident of what one is doing, whatever one does, right? So therefore, one should always have without relying on one's own livelihood, without relying on others. If one is able to do by oneself, then that makes us more confident, even in our mundane life.
내가 가르치잖아. 내가 가르치잖아. 로 소소를 찾은 넘비도 템포 거르세디 맞서 센지 계시시서나 쳔바 템포로 와. 쳔바 템포여서나 맞서나 랑수 템포래. 랑수 템포여서나 장어도 로고 말에 소수 제비게 제일 로투.
Therefore, this is what it actually emphasizes on to rely on the mindfulness. If one is able to cultivate this mindfulness. And then whatever we do, one will be doing so, you know, by following the reasonings, correct reasonings, in other words.
Yata yansa, jeta neka deda la chenpa kumba niji shi, jude yine chebang, ripi lane deba sha she so sondu.
So in this way, engaging in the Bodhisattva states, in any of these situations, I'll practice mindfulness with this motive, aspire to meet teachers and engaging in the appropriate activities.
Diki neko ite nga su dresha zo de kasen pechi sha ne chenpa zo go ya tingo ne pechi ya de kuyu tanda metu ne nga su shu de ma nzhuyo zho chi la suwa ya na kuwa di mara ge tani yungu re de me je wa che nyanka che shu de chenpa se na tenpo go bi jinsen rawa chenpa tenpo go bi jinsen yim zhoyo chi la ma tanda nga su yo ba de kuwa de len da su su kuwa de le yim.
So here now it's actually this particular chapter, this particular paragraph or the entire page actually emphasize on how important it is for us to have the mindfulness. So mindfulness is one that is very, very important for our spiritual practices.
Tenga zu pakalo chenpa tenpo magana karisa na yin xiong to zho so na de jing nga zu se bu bi chung chu chi shu lo le xiang so ne cha zho wa ra nga zu senpa de kari nyan kal tu ha kwa yas ki ya ma ya.
So without mindfulness, then we will always become under the influence of the mental wanderings. And then if one become under the control or the power of the mental wanderings, then one's practice will not become authentic. So it is just like you are just letting the toddlers, go outside and do whatever he or she wants to do it.
Chenpa tenpo yo so na tanda ki nga su chunso no la kange kang yo ba tene chenpa ki yasa chi le ya tuwa yin so na shi kange kang che na chenpa so so do sa tang sha gre.
So here now, if one is able to rely on this mindfulness, if one is able to maintain this the mindfulness, then regardless of what is happening in your surroundings, and you will not be distracted.
Ndiko de jesenda de bi chenpa tempo singide ge shenye da zho mando tobi ye toba mombo yo so na jeden je kansa ji cha jeden je kansa la chenpa tempo yo so na dare ma so umar han cha gre.
So then here, having met with the authentic spiritual teacher and received vast teaching from the qualified teacher, then one will become a practitioner, analytical practitioners. And this analytical practitioner will lead oneself to become the practitioner of the middle way. So you will not fall into extreme views.
Shansen je lobi panglang lepa mi shebi tuba shene shebi ten na la shalang tangche de chenpa jincha se ten la zunju zong gobe zun sa ma chuba geche wo songdo deshi.
And here it says, in summary, you must study study and discern well what Bodhisattva's training requires you to adopt and to cast aside, and then joyously persevere at continuously being mindful in all your conduct of what you have understood about what to adopt and what to cast aside. Hence, it is extremely important not to err about that at which you are to persevere.
Loja panglang se de inchi meji kene daja so me she ya nga so nyanga che shu nyen de yi panglang de mege je bong chu so ya de ro ta mege je bong yu chu de so ne ani de ta de ne de de ro tu ye nga so ge ta nyanga de ne pe go ro den ju ji ki panglang chi je de se je bi che de ni jen bi me ba de 아니 칼레저세 당아서 체리 칼레데지 칼레저라다 받셀 개버와 얘나야 다들 배파 세고를 도리리지 세고로 얘나야 가제 드리지 미유로 지자 아니 데이터나 칼레저서에나 안다 저서 맞추어와.
So then here it's what it says is the hence it is extremely important not to hurry about what which you are to be perseverance. One's perseverance of one's practice must be extremely important to something that is correct or right practice that one is doing. In other words, engaging in the practice of abandon what is to be adopted and what is to be cast aside, and that should be done correctly. So including the practice of adopting the 10 virtues and abandoning 10 non-virtuous actions and so forth. And this can only be done correctly if one is able to maintain this what we call the mindfulness that we talked about earlier.
디가는 션라탄지 쳔바 진차스 템바 송도 먼저 션라견도 라지라 도제님은 제마타세데 쳔바 템보여서나 션라 카티거디나요 녀모모도 마로바지 해서다 나선 센터스 도도그린 주연센터로와.
So here now
로자노 소마나이
just as it's mentioned in our the trainings of the mind, where it says as soon as you realize there's negative thoughts that's taking place in your stream of being, and then immediately acknowledged and avert it, right? So therefore for that it requires a mindfulness, and if one is able to maintain one's mindfulness, then at the moment that negative thoughts enters into your stream of being or your continuum, you will realize this is a negative thought, and you will immediately engage in the practice to avert this negative thoughts that is about to occur in one's mind, or it has already been occurred in one's mind.
제당아서 쳔바세데 이줄에 미바샤나 쳔바텐세데 미바 제마지세저라 단데 쳔바세데 소소기 고소기 샹라라 쳔바텐세는 데로와.
So when speaking about mindfulness, there's a mindfulness of single-pointed mindfulness, but single-pointed mindfulness where you are actually focusing your mind single-pointedly with mindfulness, or single-pointedly on one particular object or the chosen object of meditation or so forth. But here at this point, when we are talking about mindfulness, we're not talking about that kind of mindfulness. We're talking about being alert, being very careful, and to see whether the negative thoughts is taking place in our stream of beings, or you're being alert of our actions of the body, speech, and mind. So then it's just like, even if we were driving, we have to be mindful while we're driving, right? It requires a mindfulness. Similarly, here now, when speaking about our conduct of body, speech, and mind as a practitioner, it requires a mindfulness. And what is negative deeds or the negative actions that is to be abandoned, and what is the positive deeds or the virtues that is to be adopted, and so forth.
다간제 지당 전부 걸다 오늘 이 신의 같다 뭔가 되게 되나 내가 저기 전파질에 작업했을 때 간제 주거질에 선나도 말이에요. 그 전파 템보기 지 공소한 인소나 아니 레카 그런 제기를 템베스인데 지지로 와 이후로 송와로 맞아 전파 때 잡이가 로스위지기 템베 가르치고 다세 로기 때 나도데 맞아 단단 맞아 시체되다 로스 생에 되는 주고 조사도 기여 말이다. 가정 가서 공부 매비가라 아니 나시레레 와르치 마도 지 찬연도 레가 제무도 비서 진도아 아니 강전에 신주 제를 거라 아니 전부 세벌해 비거라 아니 지 현다지 현다没现다지没现다 다원은 이게 공시 용도 세네 대다 강전에 채통을 해서 말아.
So now here, this mindfulness is required for everything, even if one is engaging in our daily activities, it requires a mindfulness, right? Mindfulness doesn't necessarily mean that requires a single pointed, single pointedness. That's not the only mindfulness we are talking about here. Mindfulness is need to be employ each and every actions. Particularly we as practitioners, we should employ this mindfulness when one is engaging in any activities of the body, speech, and mind. And but here in the mindfulness that we will have elaborate explanations will be given when we are going through the practice, when we're going through the explanation of the samadhi, the part of this the meditative stabilizations. But mindfulness, when you talk about mindfulness, it's not something mindfulness we're not talking about the mindfulness something that is just has only one facets, but rather it has a multifaceted. So this is what the mindfulness that we're talking about. So now it talks about the benefits of if one engages in the profession of joyous perseverance, where he talks about how to use joyous perseverance to make the mind and body serviceable.
On the Chibi Tau De, on the Chibi Tau Sana Versendua, Tayan Payaji Liu in Shebata, Shansen Lajala Logubi, and the Log Gubi Guludan, Kelane, Malona, Yimishi de Chevadan, Numola Dataludan, Dice, Kashila Kutu Minziba Gentu Tavi, Saint Tau Jechu Nan Le, Delanju. Delan Jupi, Modo, Ale Tomotenjo, Chidang Katu Digi Kombo Sheduda, Monetana, and the Chundrits on a lesson lesser on the country legre, say the lesson lesser on Yoala, and Degore, so.
So now here's how to joyously perseverance make the mind and body serviceable. What it says, the method for using joyous perseverance to make the mind and body serviceable is power of masters. Shantideva set forth in the chapter on the conscientiousness in this engaging in the Bodhisattva's deeds. The necessity of learning the Bodhisattva's training, the extremely grave consequences if you do not train in this once you have pledged to do so. How to regard the afflictions as enemy.
Also, on the Jubi, Tausona, on the Jubi Tausona, Jenson on the call on the Jubi Tausona, Kanga on the Jetung at the quality say that. Zundri Ben soon begin Jebutella, and listen on the J, Taujilasona, and Carichero.
So here now, what it says is the method for using joyous perseverance to make the mind and body serviceable is power of mastery. So you will, our joyous perseverance will have power of mastery, and our conduct of the actions of the body and mind and the body will follow the joyous perseverance.
On the Jubi Tausen, the Tantamaso, Susan, what the door, then I'm also did it. Liu Senji Jingwa, Senji Mo Jingwa the city, Tahara Jingwa the Jenny, Nai, want the Kono Rani, but they also G. Count Jung the Shingason, Shinju Zabo, Cheng Jin Sona, Monazo Tata Mengis on the Jorda.
So here now at the present, we are unable to make our mind and body serviceable because we are lacking the power of joyous perseverance. So at the present, we let ourselves to be controlled by our mind or our emotions or thoughts and emotions. Our thoughts and emotions are driven by negative impulses or then affections. So with this situation, if you really analyze carefully at our situation at this point, and we're almost like we are not really having a sound, consciousness or sound mind.
다 된주기 단지 하자라 간절하고 고래 아니 님이 신의 저 간절 따고 고래 젠도만 커도면서 젠 따고 된주지 용화랑 걸 가르고 그랬으나 아니 델라 주빈 허도 레 허도서 간에 리생 겨알 거도 미로이 세 말에 미로이 세나 단지 도네 상세지 쉬어발라 로발라 당원의 양화 때 손 테레
Then here it says, and the ways to generate the courage that looks upon the hardships of battling the affections as an ornament rather than a burden. So then rather than a burden. Yeah, sorry. That's right.
어때래 되는로 안 빼나 나초를 취해서 양내지 제외나 지 천안으로 강남으로 지게 파지네 다시 말든지 여러 책임도
So for us, whenever we engage in the practice, we're unable to complete the practice. That is what it happens. We're unable to carry the practice purely or completely.
다 될어 가르고서는 류신자의 센시자 겨울지 리센이가 지다 그도 롱와나게 몇 강여바 나게 이자 통해지 차나 아니 상세지 쇼바 간지질로 하고나 니 양와도 좋아요 그래 소야지.
So it is for that we need the perseverance to make the mind and body serviceable without having any difficulties. Regardless of what kind of bodhisattva's practice one may undertakes, one can undertake joyously. Regardless of what kind of practice it may be, one can practice joyously if one is able to make our mind and body serviceable.
진의 레정 하루네 통치도네 투여다 대다 바에 땅 전대 당이 당 양화샤 손도 시에서 손도宣주기.
So then here it says, meditate on this before taking up the task of training in the Bodhisattva's deeds, thus stopping all the inhibitions that prevent you from using your body and mind for virtuous activities. Rise gladly to the task, to that task. And engaging in the Bodhisattva deeds says, in order to have strength for everything before engaging in any activities, I will recall that advice on the conscientiousness and then gladly rise to the task.
되게 그 지단이나 네 론마 방법을지는 과야 뭐 차가 말해. 알고 그 지단이나 가서 되는 다 원마 차차차 그 종이 내다로 와. 종이 내다서 종치만 번 주요인데 먼저 레슨이 대화대 준비에 접으래. 준비에 접을 레슨 준비에 접으면 레슨 시작이 되와. 니뭐 카도 니뭐 돼서 레로를 해서야 돼. 준비에 약간으로 되지.
So body and serviceable, becoming a body and mind serviceable is the result of the practice of joyous perseverance. With this practice of joyous perseverance, one will be able to achieve the mental and physical appliances. And for that, what we need to practice is to apply, in order to accomplish such qualities, one need to engage in the practice of application of antidotes towards laziness or the indolence. Take 10 minutes break. So here normally we find in the text where it says the genuine faith is the cause of aspirations, and then the joyous perseverance is a companion of the aspirations, and the joyous perseverance is actual antidote towards laziness, and the suppleness of the mind and body is the result of the perfection of joyous perseverance. So the next, it says the question, what form will the joyous perseverance produce by such effort take? Then it says, reply, just as wind drives a piece of cotton to and fro, a joyful energy enthused for virtue controls your body and mind. When you act along with this energy, joyous perseverance is well established. Once you produce this, you will easily achieve all collections. So if one is able to achieve the suppleness of mind and body by means of, as a result of practice of perfection of joyous perseverance, then one will become free of exhaustions, regardless of how long the practice that one may do, or what kind of practice that one may undertake, you will never become exhausted. So we will then be able to identify that accomplishment of the result of practice of practice of joyous perseverance. Not necessarily a perfection of joyous perseverance, but joyous perseverance. When you are able to engage in the practice without any body and mind exhaustion of the body and mind, and become so serviceable, so you become exhaustion free, in other words, then that is the result of the practice of joyous perseverance.
대체나 sendoa 대체나 되네 소탕제 델라드 주번 저대 델라든 주번 저대 제타 농기 알린 저대 전에다상 된제제 신주익시 제타 농는 조아다 오와 신비 온조와 대신 주베 온저대 대타 나는 주번 저로 셔서 손도.
So then here it says, once you produce this, you will easily achieve all the collections, referring to collection of virtues or collection of merits. Then it says, engaging in the Bodhisattva states, just like a cotton under the power of, just like a cotton under the power of a wind that blows to and fro. So I will be driven by enthusiasm. In this way, I will accomplish all. So once you have accomplished, you have achieved this mind and body, suppleness of mind and body, then you can engage in practice or meditation or whatever the practice that one do. You can do it throughout the day without, having experience of any fatigue or becoming any fatigue and so on. So everything requires familiarity, the familiarizations. One must familiarize with that any kind of practice. It requires a familiarization. In order to become familiar with certain practice, it requires a perseverance, right? So if one is able to familiarize, if one is able to engage in such practice time and again, then you will be able to familiarize with certain practice. So then it will not become as complex as it used to be, because you become so familiarized with these practices. Then it says, although such tasks are difficult, it is wrong to give them up. Rather, as a glorious Bodhisattva's praise in 150 verses says, you must make effort. The sublime state, difficult to reach, is not attained without hardships. Knowing this, you intensify your joyous perseverance without concern for yourself. Also, So when you really look at and this practice of the Bodhisattvas, it is something that is so vast that you can't fathom those practices, right? Just like someone is asking you to try to finish the ocean in one sip. So this is something that we feel at this moment.
인투이치기 서바 제도나다 다 가디이나 통투야 코노야 말에 그 이제 시작을 못해야 한다고 그러지로.
So it is not possible for one to finish the ocean within one sip, right? So it's not possible. So this is how we feel at this point, at this moment, when speaking about the qualities of the Bodhisattvas and the practice of the Bodhisattvas.
다 나속에 지 생계 정신 세나리 그 잡아 대당도 지다 생계 정신 내당도 지다 생계 당차도 지 시소아이나야 그 니마 준비원은 저는 이래요 그 당연히 지지래도.
So however, if we are able to understand our nature of our mind and how our mind is actually untainted by the defilements, then there's a certain way or methods to overcome or to clear away all those defilements and let this nature of mind functions. Then you will have the conviction or possibility of letting this nature of mind functions.
대답을 샤카양 도도 메롱게 칼레 적고래 손도아 칼레 맞잖아 가시 맞잖아 아니 고번 전부터 영향 그러면 가서 영향이와 사적인 이제 또 가지는 춘이 덴바 덴베 좋아져 손에 데려와.
So therefore it says now once again, although the such tasks are difficult, it is wrong to give them up. Rather, so therefore then it says, rather the glorious Medsitters praised on the 150 verses says, you must make an effort because it requires effort. So therefore Buddha has stated that I will free all sentient beings by giving them the teachings on truth or the teachings on suchness.
안되지. 나서 고아된 랭거처럼 베팅 나 이거 문도세는 베팅 나팔에 미다 살년도 손이 제도는 그때나에 타고도. 근데 나 야노네 나팔 로고 있으면 감바전 마도.
So then here, if you become so discouraged and by thinking that I will not be able to undertake such practice, then then you will never reach anywhere.
안되지. 다다 주베스 제타 샤와네 세디 나촌데 나네 치모 코노기 자이 사지데레 베제 시바딘 사야. 다다 주베스 제타 샤와 대다게 된데와서 자이 사지 시바다가 바니데.
So here now we're following the one of the again main outlines of the Lam Rim Chenmo, how to practice, and the summary.
안되지. 대다 주베스 제타 샤와네 준주 강자양 담바 주된도 샤와다 파신 주단저와 주 고대 준주 지신바네 랑 될라네네 예텔은 거바 인라 하마나 하시바 젠노 소도 하마나.
So then here it says how to practice. You must practice any kind of joyous perseverance in association with the six supremacies and all six perfections. The generosity of joyous perseverance, establishing others in joyous perseverance. After you have stabilized yourself therein, the remaining perfections are in accord with the earlier explanation.
되게 리리치라 또 맞아 담바 주기 놓은 게 담바 세대 근데 가서 리데다 센텐스 베게니 준주 장에 센텐데라 니 샤주 생거래 지로 아체니 정에나 담바.
So here when we speak about the six supremacies, it talks about, right, you must practice the kind of joyous perseverance in association with the six supremacies. So if we briefly talk about the six supremacies, it starts from the supremacy of or the fundamental basis, which is the maintaining the mind of enlightenment or maintaining the mind of bodhicitta as a fundamental basis. This is the first supremacy.
ngô thangba se so na ta rande jende bashi le ngo kan samba de jende bashi le ho tu nge chi ro.
The second one is the engaging in the six perfections.
Jende bashi mo se mi je ta ka jende bashi che mo ta ba de wo ni u do.
So, engaging in the six perfection is in an unbiased manner as the fundamental approach.
Rande la cha ba ma yin ba so ju go do.
So such practice requires not attached towards one's own welfare, but solely working for the welfare of other beings.
Ta che de sha ba ta ba se de ta zhen ju zang ba de sen je ta ju zo bi sang ji ko hong go bi che de ro.
So then the third one is the Chedu Chavadamba, which means the working for the welfare of all sentient beings as a fundamental beneficiary of one's practice.
Ta ta ke ba tang ba se yin de ne ta da me to bi shira ge sing go so an de le do.
So then the fourth one is conjoining all one's practice with the thought of purity of the three factors. In other words, one's practice must be conjoined with the wisdom realizing selflessness.
Ta ho ta ba ne da zo bi sang ji ko hon che de ne se je ta ju zo bi sang ji ko hon che de ne ho a ji go do ma.
So then dedicating all one's virtue to the attainment of the sublime state of enlightenment as the fundamental dedications, which is not only oneself but establishing, dedicating the achievement of this attainment of the enlightenment of other sentient beings as well, all other sentient beings as well. Sorry.
Number taba tombo se de ne yuri de shi di pa mi che de se de ke da ba sa de ji le pa gu ro sen je pa ne shen de shi so de ro.
So then the last one is applying antidotal forces, against the two types of delusions, or two types of negative thoughts and emotions, in other words, or the obscuration to omniscience and obscuration to liberations.
Ta patient to den de nyang se len go se de patient ji le pe na zhen ju da de zhen ju patient de la patient to ga de chang go re sen lo yi na da ran ni zhen ju ge zang ba de yin zhen ju ji patient lang go bi che de na da yin ba chu ji yin ba cha go do.
So then how do we practice this joyous perseverance in association with six perfections, beginning from the generosity of joyous perseverance? How do we practice? Here now it begins with not only that one practices this, one engages in the practice of joyous perseverance, but also one teaches others how to engage in the practice of joyous perseverance will become the generosity of joyous perseverance.
Ne sutre zhenju ge sutre se de zhenju ge le lo song ba ko le lo ka ba ko la ka ba de ga sutre se de chen ro chen se de lo ba ka ba ro da le lo song ba de ka ba de da na ge sutre cha go ro.
So here now the practice of the morality of joyous perseverance is by eliminating this three kinds of laziness we talked about earlier, the main obstacles for joyous perseverance, the main opponent of the joyous perseverance. By engaging in the practice of elimination of this three laziness is the morality of the joyous perseverance.
Karsa zoba ne de ro gyo la to ba ka le ja tu nge la zoba se la ro ka te ja tu nge to ye na ka le ja tu ro.
So then having a delight in engaging in the practice in accumulation of merits and the virtuous actions is the patience of the joyous perseverance.
Da jiba zhenju ko ro chong de che ani dan ju ga so chen ba ten go zhenju sang le chen ba ten go de se lo de sang de da ra le go ro.
So then mindfulness is, we talked about earlier, that in order to engage in the practice of joyous perseverance, mindfulness is something that is important. So the mindfulness will become the concentration of the Joyous Perseverance.
Chida shirane dame to be shirade, deme to be shirala, Janaya, to the code, the Gonala, Chikate on the Yule, Chabatin and Josue, so Shiraki Chato Chagra.
So then here requires, whenever we engage in any practices or anything, it requires analysis. So the requirement of analysis and employing the analytic or the very analytical point of view or the analytical standpoint is the wisdom of Joyous Perseverance.
Chidane Maso de Nepala Chicoma, and also Passion on the Rani, the Quachile Bicola, and the college me Passion Kandu Sansare, Sherpa Kandu Sansares, and the social Shinjuche. Shinjuche on the squad the head or Quad the less on the Jima Jegomare. Boa Malaya, see Gentle Hiesona, Jima Jelo. Quad, can't you quad less on a Jegomare?
So here, not only that what I'm explaining and listening to what are my explanations, but I would also encourage all of you to analyze yourself very carefully how this practice of, in other words, how the practice of generosity can be practiced in association with 6 perfections. And with this, then you will have a firm understanding of the generosity of Joyous Perseverance. Then you will never forget. Once you're able to analyze and understood through a proper analytic, then will maintain your. You will not forget at all.
Also, Tenhi Shu Yang, Koro Passion Rana, Kuy Tombo Saji Tombo Telete, and they Monsing it. In the social Dudichitra, Telon is into Ayana, Pemesia War. Mazo, Trasal, Jung also was singing on the Sugar Pit Jani, the Vegeton in the singer. In a Ripacho at the Sun, Koranu Java singing, Dudure, and again Tokyo at the Sugi, Lochimboya, Trasaling, Lochimbo, and Moboyre, Tendreko, Ripacho at the Sun, Ranu thinking about the century. Lord. Ranu say the Seni de Yawadan, and Shiva de. Does it talk about Shuri and the Joma Tondon?
So here, when you are going through such treaties, such as the treaties on the stages of the path to enlightenment, it is not possible for us to memorize entire texts, period. But it is important for us to memorize the divisions, outlines, and the divisions. Something that is very, very important because it will really, facilitates your enhancement or the development of your practice. This is what we do at the monastery, because at monastery, because we are going through a rigorous studies of the vast texts, and there are some who are very good at memorizations, so they can memorize the hundreds and thousands of pages. But there are not all of them are same. There are some who are very poor in memorizations, but then they do memorize all these divisions and the natures and definitions and then outlines are very, very important.
The John Soda, Seni Jong does a Jiton, Tombadel Kachigaba, Nibada Ranujaba, any Somba de Zoba Pong, they sonja no Yosu Zoba Zematona, any Ranujaba de El Century, Moncha, not Seni Jong. There's a card.
So here he's always emphasized that when you go through the teachings and reading the text, and you will always see the Kaji Shalpa as the other's position, and then Kaji Gaba, and you're actually disputing, or you're actually disputing the others position, or you're refuting the other's position in others. You're refuting others' position, and having refuted others' position, then one is establishing one's own positions, then eliminating the dispute at the end. So this three will always find in many texts.
대체 아니 그게 장루 생산에 아니 얘기 빼셔지 아니 저번에 거라 단다데 시로데 아니 이제나 지종천보기 가려이나 그게 지 정신적으로 장루를 과들래도 다 용년부터서 지지리니서는 뭐지 장용으로마도 다 용과영에서 다 코로존이 아마데 코라사.
So here, therefore, if one is unable to, although that one may not be able to memorize all, but it is important for one to memorize one's own position. When it comes to the section of one's own position, this need to be memorized. So if you're able to memorize one's own positions, then whenever you are asked any kind of questions, you'll be able to answer the questions.
정체모 로저 쟁도서 아니 사이 정대 다이나 다데서 양간이 돈으로 차는면서 배나 오마이나 오마 주방 아니 파신 답이 걸라이는 것도 지서서 양 사이 거로 데레 생거에게 주택이 내가 찾아서서서요 로지를 쇼부터 가서 제거스네 대 최자거와
So at the
하도
monastery,
하니 제도 답 할래로 쇼게 배나 추석 나바는 쇼게 추석 나바 심벌 배제 까만 쟁어 지지거라 맞서 놓고래 다 건다 주세 주지대 세계 나데 주지대 세계 인도만이지 가지 주소 동보스도 와제디 주소 니를 소르면서 뭐냐게 빼먹어 생각하면 년들이 리노 배제 주는 게 쉬워요. 나도스 좀 치면 너저 제도 도스러와.
so this is how the people who are really rigorously studying the great deities or the practicing the Dharma and the monastery. And for those who are actually engaging in the studies of this great deities, for instance, in order to study the Madhyamaka, that's a requirement of memorizing the root text of Madhyamaka and the Madhyamaka Avatara, or the fundamental, the root text of the Madhyamaka Avatara. And when they are, engaging in the studies, when they are studying this perfections, then that's a requirement of memorizing the ornament of clear realization, the root text of ornament of clear realizations of Avisamaya Alamkara. So here now it is really we at the monastery, the way they actually study, it's they wake up at 4:45 in the morning, and for almost entire day, they'll just have a little bit of break and the time for eating and so on. But beginning from 4:45, literally beginning from 4:45 a.m. morning all the way, for me, I've remember studying till 11:30 p.m. 4:45. And there are many others who are not only that, but also I see them studying and learning and memorizing the text till 1 a.m. So just some of them are just sleeping for 2 or 3 hours at night. And this is how much effort they're putting for to study the Dharma.
당가바 대다기 되디와네 손도 쉽게 상주지스 가마된 로차세 페젤로사시에서 대다 주베츠 제다 셔와네 또 로차이바 로차로자 나바 대다기 되디와네 쉽게 상주지스 제스 전진 감바네 신제 당지尊주는 거 비던도 로발라 규제 인베 대 제배의 당신 대내 사투비尊주 장루나 미비유의 세대 용라 레동보의尊주라 로루 나라에 양사 네바탄 때네 베바탄 체바도 튜모 마이비 尊주지 번자 shum반 나 레방고바 터자 상주 당 제的小生间汤姐姐跌度如今塞瓦当对切人啊当错他也不当嘎些巴对面把人注意过去尊重上吧而且上吧讲吧呢送到俺那对吧今天这些的忙着俺我等着想多这个对俺尊的宣主最多多 Tenda samba shin the love chewa, jeba sanje sana love chewa, soba, lazangi shuba le somba, sombe beba shate, sondo watiba.
A summary, let's reading through the text here. A summary. The recollection and cultivation of the spirit of enlightenment, the basis of the Bodhisattva's deeds, inspires you to train in order to set all living beings in the joyous perseverance. So steadily increase this spirit, and then aspire to and train in the methods of joyous perseverance for those at high levels. Also, strive as you are able at the method of learning joyous perseverance for a beginning bodhisattva. In particular, effectively stop the various forms of discouragements. This being uniquely subject to elimination by joyous perseverance. Mentally put on the armor of joyous perseverance in enthusiastic about the following: the goal of enlightenment and the aim of accomplishing the happiness and eliminating the suffering of all living beings. The very long period of time, the limitless collections, and the immeasurable hardships strived at these attitudes, because the questions of the Sabhuba Sutra says,
아니 선제 당지 존주는 거비 체도 아니 존주 장바래 세만 선제 반에 전대시 상추 선제 거비 전스가 전주 된들에 손바나기 존주지 파신 녀스 강바 대양 아니 선제지 아니 존주지 파신랑 거비 체들에세 지지.
Just as we find in the Abhisamayam, ornament of clear realizations, the very purpose of generating bodhicitta is for the benefit of all other sentient beings. Similarly, here it also find the recollection and cultivation of the spirit of enlightenment, the basis of the Bodhisattva's deed, inspire you to train in order to set all living beings in joyous perseverance. Our main practice of joyous perseverance is to establishing other beings in the practice of the joyous perseverance.
당가 존주 공패도 동바 대세들이 존주기 상추기 선제요디 상추기 선라디로 공패도 줘 당내 아니 다 사탕벌에 비타나 저 존주의 사제바오기 냐내로와 사제바오기 냐내데 다나가 저 제투에 커버려다 유무샤와제 아니 대다 대시샤와데 마라라기 제투와 쇼서네 임하게 유되세네 근데 로상 제쇼 소도와.
Although such practice, we speak about the practice, the perfection of joyous perseverance can only be achieved when one reaches on the four bhumis of the bodhisattvas, four bhumis of the bodhisattvas, on the fourth ground of the bodhisattvas. Yet we should put an effort to engage in the practice with the wholeheartedly and with the aspiration to attain the fourth bhumi, so that we can perfect one's practice of the joyous perseverance, become one's practice as a perfection of joyous perseverance.
사시바 년에 존주에서도 수도당 개체만 거지. 파신 주게 농게 존주 파신이 년에 나빠 터사대 아니 샹사 사시바와 되래 손 데려와.
Out of the 10 perfections, the perfection of joyous perseverance can be perfected when one gains the fourth bhumi of the bodhisattvas.
다 인자데 다 내가 동보하다서 저랑이 투날 제거를 마투네 제거를 세네 제가 진 다마서 전주 장로 가신 아니 투세지지 제 아니 대라 유머샤제 칼레칼레 제슈세 가서 가는 하셔시고 나서 대나기게 아니 내가 동보하기 전주 장로나 네파다 때는 배 송도아.
So therefore, it never says that you should practice anyways, it never instructed like that. We have gone through a really skillful advices, we discussed during our previous teachings, that you should put an effort in accordance with your own mental capacities. Do not put too much efforts so that you become you will become so stressed, and then you will not be able to carry on your practice continuously. Rather, do it in accordance with one's ability.
라바도 가서 내 동보 팀모 많이 받대 내 두고 민도 소소마 빠숑리 되더라. 아니 팀모 많이 비 준주지 빠져 숑바나 내방고 손도아. 내 두고 말이 상에데 가 손도아.
So always, what one need to remember here is important to remember is to discouragement is something that is to be eliminated always. You should not, remain discouraged by thinking that this is so hard practice, I'll not be able to do it. This kind of mental attitude should not be, cultivated.
되지. 근데 터져 치드샤와 같이 치드샤와 담바야 치드샤와 선제 타지기 아니 동해 말에 대화주 동해 세타 뒤지시 리보 타예비바다 가시 빠도 메발 생고나야 말하기 제외인스비 근데 도선데 제쇼다 선나 빠도 메바 터버리 터버대야 아니 도 라사시비 도레 페야 강수바나기 터버리에 손에 손도아.
So therefore, then it says one should rather put, efforts up to whatever it takes. I will do so, continuously working for the welfare of other sentient beings. And this is the determination one should always have, that I will establish entire sentient being to the true state of happiness. And I will take this responsibility on my shoulder to establish sentient beings to the state of complete happiness. And if one is able to do that, then you will receive all those benefits as the benefits mentioned in the questions of the Subhava Sutra.
되지. 다니가 좀 되는 송도아데 삼바기 고차도 그런 송도아. 조이 선비 고차도 그런 송도아.
So always it says one should always wear the armor of the courage, armor of the joyous perseverance, armors of the joyous perseverance.
되지. 든지긴 거네. 나초게 저번 전부터 기지로와. 더 선제 통제기 때문에 내 최근 인생이 든지긴 거네. 지 도도 매매기 조선 이게 딱 고차선데 도도 매매 가지 젠데 카티 잡으면 통이게 고쳐지로와. 든지를 그 통에 이제 차와 있나 더서나 될 하데도 간다사로와.
So then it is without a question, if one is able to wear such armor, then accumulation of merits, the vast accumulation merits will happen naturally.
대타 마셔나 리진네바 때문에 제신 녀셔 때문에 장 진도 거라 세라진도 상추지 셔발로 쳐와 치가완 제신 대답은 셔바 샤데 제 따와지 나서 만로장 로데이 쇼스 존에 진이지 존지 장나 라사지 슈바네 숨바타 제와진도 체충 동해메바 뉴도 존지 파르데 심바 조바셰바 숨비 셔로 손도 되 알레테 신주 치레면도
So then here it says, the question of Subhava Sutra says, just by generating the powerful surge of such a resolve, you accumulate a great wave of merits. If you do not do this, you will fail to scare your Mahayana lineage, and you are also continually stained by much wrongdoings. And in other lives as well, you will find it difficult to learn the Bodhisattva deeds. Also, after you have become aware of such things, even if you do not practice perfectly, motivate yourself in that directions. If you do, then joyously persevere to the extent that you are able. Then, as the questions of the Subhava Sutra says, you will quickly complete the perfection of joyous perseverance in future lives without suffering and with little difficulty.
대가라는 가서 변 대다 맞는 리진 뉴버 때문에 제신 세대 가서 데려와 변은 가서 변은 상제 살아로 여리 여리 세나리 랑신이 여리 세나리 아니 디제시베 님보스니 여리 세나리 칼레지 마잖아 리치니 바데 제비 터진 요마로.
Yeah. So here now, although that we do have, we do have this, the Buddha nature or the Mahayana nature or the Buddha nature, the Mahayana lineage within all of us. If you are unable to engage in the practice continuously, and then it says, just as if we find in the text where it says, you will fail to secure your Mahayana lineage, without doing any practice, without putting an effort to do the practice. Just having the Buddha nature within one's mind alone is not sufficient.
당가서 니바 메제데 코로치 란제 데도란 지게 말이 지그로 데마제 메제비 가나 니셔 때문에 진도네 공프 거도를 손도 다 진네 덴만 러시아고로 니셔는 맞은 로드 천셔라 다 진네 지 차당이 됐어 다부터 진네 바 로나게 용용 바래도.
So then it says, you fail to secure Mahayana lineage, and you are also continually stained by much wrongdoings. So this happens with us because this attachment and aversion is just like a unstoppable winds that always going through our mind. So with this unstoppable wind of attachment and aversion will always lead us to will always end up in doing something that is wrong. We end up in wrongdoing.
든든치기 내가 칠레 두르마도 야른 줘면은 저와 이제 저러 진다 야려 제 개민도 로 상주 주셔 로버첼라 칼레카르마도 야른 줘 개민도.
If you're unable to continue the practice and make ourselves better, then you will become one will become bad to worse in our future life. We will not be able to improve ourselves. It is not something that it is a logic, right? If one is unable to improve oneself, then one will not become a better person.
인주기 내다도 강에도 소소기 낭시도 되시 사나 코네 아니 지다와진도 송바나 히지도 냥선레마 도나야 로데이 쇼스에니 장네 전주 장발은 하나 최지지 저와이나 네 저와진도 최총에 전주 장토를 sondoa.
So that what it says now. At this moment, one may not be able to follow the teachings. One may not be able to engage in all the practice that is required for us. But one should at least have a genuine aspiration to undertake those practices and have a genuine motivations to engage in this practice.
맞아 로데이 쇼스 장생인데 지 디시션을 지 야페타토 도쇼라 카티나 가보체토에 지로 콘트리텐트 거려와 맞아 단다발 통마메 단다바도 지 메게어쇼도 차단쇼를 콘트리텐나 강하슈슈 조디에 꼭 공비쟁어도 숨바로와 데메제어제 아니 장쇼래야 콘트리텐나기 진도토와이나 아니 뭐네 장산도샤이지요.
We also it is important for us to familiarize ourselves with the virtuous deed or the positive deeds. From the beginningless time up until now, we are very much habituated and familiarized with engaging in negative deeds. So therefore, when we are engaging in negative deeds, it doesn't require much effort. We effortlessly engage in negative deeds, body, speech, and mind. So therefore, similarly, if one is able to familiarize oneself with the practice or with the deeds of the virtuous deeds of the body, speech, and mind, it will also at some point, due to the habituations, one will be able to make this as a natural, effortless.
용세 코로나 시병 아빠 되디고 제다 되디고 생인데 니 지부 담바도서 제다 스리나 깨져 시 켜바 집이 거라 니 타투기 동지 적을 송다 대나게 되래 동저데 진주기 되디데 양스로 니 소시 시지던 데비도는 양스야서 미바지 제도와이나 아니 대가 천원 슈체모들 해로와 소소와 사로라.
So here the summaries are very, very important to read. Just read through the summaries and try to contemplate on the meaning of the summaries, and not just mere reading, but when you understand the meanings and try to mingle those meanings with your mind, in other words, the practice, undertake this practice, will then really help us to, develop our mental attitude. So there isn't much, the summary. It's just a long paragraph. That's one long paragraph, just to read, several times if you have time, then contemplate and try to practice it. It will really become a practical if during the teachings of the Lam Rim, if whatever the teachings that you have received today, any particular chapter or the paragraphs or the verses that you may have studied and you may have received the teachings, if one try to practice this after the the teachings is over, then this will really become a good habit of engaging in this practice, and also help us to develop our state of mind. So we may not be able to have teachings on the 31st of this month, which is the last Sunday of this month, because Rinpoche said that he was invited by the Sri Lanka master to his place. And so let's not have teachings on 31st of this month. So let's do our dedications. May I establish all sentient beings to the state of complete enlightenment as swift as possible. So therefore, I will continue to practice, engage in the practice of joyous perseverance. And by wearing the armor of joyous perseverance, not only that practicing and wearing the joyous armor of my perseverance by myself, but also establishing all other beings, inside sentient beings, in the practice of joyous perseverance. And may all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas bless me to be able to do this. So if one is able to dedicate in such a way, then you will have the benefits of accumulating merits, just as it mentions in the question of Subhava Sutra.
사단 노주 유대 로도 도제 창계 고보뉴로 쇼 예당 구르로 면전노고는 연노여 베네르도 베네 소니 가다 야모 가시 서반데 노메 머리게 돈 조바 나제 자예 홍보 도주지 대모 수비 새로 근도용 장배 양주 지배 제존 대배rembo 근선노제조 예네 주변 제노 예셰조 랑게 제제 도배 랑제修正自愿超越头给解卓越业界面包随现教业电报有人在纠结电报人间出给马脚悄悄娘报举杯说的你这前辈一绕就报别的对对是我写报随见教育民众成年的列主相处浪迹人别长他的浪迹一浪别的心教育自保人都终究尽浪上主编天见主席经也见世界莫当明明切入更多教育马报朗当朗当这我马就见刚才贴吧求了去世界期间住了准报地位赛多点脑子导读主席经这些讲词就有就也记觉得那面不在老边境那个天天手机接报呢我上电别这面扫松的若月面色大多年就见看着这个过于眼光是别当的我忙的就业写的人话的人家作业小别随的报多点就见小别八月接大节目更多上坡的要的些的的到边界就是道路，也往的到当街劳动我就从西边叫我当街，我刚到就都我不。那些给月早晚的给讲，从不学习劳动我。哎呀。对不起，天就。